Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Selling Fort Collins podcast. I am here with Brian Kingsley, the superintendent of the Poudre School District. Brian, thank you for being here and welcome.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You bet. And, there has been so much going on in the school district. There's a lot that we'll get to here. But before we do, I want to introduce the audience to you. I want everyone to be able to learn a little bit about your background, how you ended up here. So how did you end up in Fort Collins, and, what transpired to ultimately, arrive at this position of superintendent?
Yeah, thanks for asking the question. So I'm in my 27th year in public education. I was born and raised in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And my grandfather actually was a catalyst in me wanting to become an educator. He was the head custodian of my local high school while I was going to school. And the man had power. And he took me to my very first high school football game. And I remember everybody walking in the stadium knew him by name, was constantly trying to fight for his attention. And it was all because he knew how to treat people with respect. He was really funny. He knew how to tell a good joke. But he was always just looking for that human connection. So growing up as a kid, I was one of 26 of his grandchildren. And so me having a little bit of time with him was really, really important. 26 grandchildren. My mom is the oldest of 9 kids. But seeing him as a kid, I always thought he was the principal of the high school because of just how people treated him. And so it made me want to emulate him and be a teacher and really pay respect to my teachers teachers really, and my coaches as a former athlete really invested a lot in me and brought a lot of my potential out. And so it's kind of a natural fit to seeing my grandfather as a role model and an iconic figure in my life, while also just really being appreciative of teachers and coaches and what they've done for me and wanting to pay that back to other people's children. And I got into education, 1998. I graduated from Penn State University, got on my very first airplane to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I was convinced by 2 tan principals to come teach near the beach. And I lived and worked in Fort Lauderdale for 17 years and worked up my way through the system and got promoted several times for just doing really, really good work. I was a teacher and I was I want to have a bigger impact on my community beyond just my classroom. And so I went back to school to become a principal and became a principal of a school that was really, really struggling. In fact, the state in Florida was actually going to close it down due to poor performance. And I approached it with a hustle and a hunger to this is not about the school. This is about the adults. This is about the community not buying in.
How old were you at that time when you became principal?
I was probably later 20s.
You look really young.
Thanks.
That's the one thing that struck me. We just met in person.
I'm old on the inside.
Minutes ago, and I thought, the stress must not be getting to this guy because he looks really young. You do look really young. So
I'm 47.
So you're 47, and you were in your late 20s when you became principal.
Yeah, I was a principal, and just consumed by this overwhelming responsibility to save this school from being closed. And so I took the approach of almost like a college football coach, where I would go to families, I'd sit on their couch, do this and say, hey, I need you to trust me that I'm about to do something in partnership with you. If you can believe in something bigger, please send your children to my school and trust me. And families started to trust, where we actually doubled our enrollment in 4 years. But the coolest part of this story is in 4 years, that middle school, Gulfstream Middle School in Hallandale Beach, Florida, became one of the highest performing schools in the state. And it blew my mind that when people in a community believe in something bigger than themselves and actually resource each other, we can do things for young people and for families in super significant ways. And so my grand experiment in my life is, how do I take that model to scale? So I became hungry to have more responsibility, oversee more schools. So I worked as an executive in that district in Broward County, Florida for a little bit as a chief academic officer, and decided I only had 17 years of experience in one community, one district. And it was different from the community in which I grew up, which was also another part of going back to school and education, right? Moving around. And so I moved back halfway back home at the time to Raleigh, North Carolina, took a job as their chief academic officer. And did the same job in Charlotte, North Carolina. So for 3 years apiece, I was in North Carolina in charge of the core business of a school district, which is learning and teaching. and just started seeing incredible outcomes as a result of partnering with people. And I've been wanting to continue to figure out how to find a home, because I was tired of moving, and realized that, as a leader, I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done things well. I've gotten great results, and every community is a little bit different. But 4 years ago, as 2021 pandemic was happening, I was recruited when the superintendency became vacant here in Fort Collins.
And that was during the pandemic.
Yeah, it was like the middle of the pandemic. We were still wearing masks. We were still trying to figure out social distancing. Schools were still trying to say, did we stay open or are we closed? And I took a leap of faith after learning about this community. I had only been to Colorado one time before, to Denver. I had never been to Fort Collins, but as I went through the interview process here, I fell in love with the place. It was almost like we were courting each other. Like the Board of Education, there was a soul that was more than just schools. It was about people. It was about humanity. It was about youthful energy, being in a college town, which was super exciting. And they wanted me as much as I wanted them. And I'm so grateful that I got hired. And I've been here now going on my 4th year. And doing great work with great people. There's been challenges along the way, but I'm so blessed to be here. And this is really not just a great place to work, but this is my home. I'm vested in this community, my neighbors, the friends, the people who make this school system great are not just the employees, it's the families who trust us with their children. And then being able to connect with them through the things that we're doing well, but also through the things that we're struggling with as a community. I find connection at the center of that. And I'm learning as much about myself as a person as I am about being the superintendent. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm really glad to be here.
I love that. And we'll get to some of the challenges. Every community that is growing, that is vibrant, is going to have some challenges to work through in their school district. We'll get there. But before we do, let's talk about what it was like when you landed in Fort Collins for the first time. You said it kind of spoke to you. I had a similar experience, actually. This is 20 years ago. But I'm curious, what did you see, do? What are some of the things that really jumped out at you as being special? Because these other areas you were at, they're nice places to live also. So what struck you immediately as being special about Fort Collins?
Funny story is how comfortable people are just sharing stories over a beer. One of the most special places in town for me is the Elizabeth Hotel, because that's where I was staying I was staying in a different hotel, and my family and I decided to stay at the Elizabeth and just be in the community for a couple of days after the interview to decompress and just relax and enjoy Fort Collins more than being a part of an interview. And I had a chance when I was offered the job, my board president and board vice president at the time asked me to meet them for a beer, where they offered me the job over a handshake. And so I just thought
where'd you meet for a beer?
In the Emporium downstairs, okay. In the lobby of the Elizabeth Hotel. And I just thought the casual nature, but the formality of doing something that needed to have a handshake associated with it, I thought was really, really cool. It made me feel like where I was growing up and I was actually hanging out with family. So it started there. And then I had to figure out really quick, where in the world am I going to live? Right. And so there was pricing wars that were happening, and sometimes are still happening in real estate across the community, and lost a lot of them along the way. And then what was fascinating, because I was living in North Carolina at the time, the intensity of the housing market, I had to buy my house over Zoom. So I had never been able to step foot in it. It was a leap of faith. And what was really cool about another, cool story here is the person who ended up selling their home to me, that their family wanted to sell it to me because I was going to be the new superintendent. In fact, I think I gave them a smaller offer than somebody else, but they thought it was important to sell their house to me because of what the school district did for their family and for their children. And they were so grateful for the service that the Poudre School District provided to them. They thought they could pay that back by selling me their house. And I was like, that's incredible. Right.
Yeah, that is incredible.
Yeah. So it's just learning about that. And so, and then as I had a chance to get plugged into the community, I've learned that our schools are interconnected with our parks and recreation. In many instances, we share land. And so having an opportunity to go for walks and visit our schools and recognize like the sheer beauty of this community and how it's incredibly walkable and people are biking everywhere and people are talking. And it's very rare for me to walk by somebody at a park or by my school and they don't say hello and greet you with a smile. Like that's the America that I've always dreamed of wanting to be a part of. It's not like that everywhere. There's a lot of other great places, but it's a special place that people, I think once they come here, they don't want to leave. And I get that now.
It's interesting. My wife and I were down in Denver recently and, walking around, and I'm used to walking around here doing what you just mentioned. Walking around in Denver, I do find that first half day, at least that I'm there, when I'm making eye contact and saying hello, I'm kind of freaking people out. And it just gives me a really quick reminder of how it's different here, how it's more down to earth, authentic. And it's not that people are mean in Denver. I think that's just more the norm. People are a bit more guarded at other places. And it's a special thing about our community. What's the general part of town that you landed in?
I landed in Southeast Fort Collins. So I'm a close walk from Twin Silo Park. Spend a lot of time there, kind of clearing my head and thinking about strategy and just decompressing. So that's such a beautiful place to live and to work. But as I was looking for homes, there's no bad part of this community. Like I looked for homes in all areas. All of our schools are incredible. So it was just by happenstance that I was able to find this family that had a beautiful home. And I'm just really grateful to them because, they also helped me land in a space where I have incredible neighbors too.
Oh, that's great. And is your family enjoying Southeast Fort Collins also?
Yeah. My partner, Carla, and her son, Sawyer, super, super happy. And so things are really, really great. And they're part of the school district as well. Sawyer is a part of
How old is Sawyer?
Sawyer's 13, soon to be 14. So he's in 8th. He just started 8th grade yesterday.
That's exciting. Where's he going to school?
Kennard Middle School.
Kennard Middle School. Great school. I mean, there's so many great schools. I get the question, I think I mentioned this to you earlier, so often, like, hey, what are the best schools in Poudre School District? I always answer, well, one, you have to be, I think in real estate, you should, guide people to one or the other, but they're truly, I hear amazing things about all of them. Yeah. I think they all have strengths and good reputations for different reasons, but it seems like they're all strong. So how would you answer that question? How would you describe the schools in the school district when you're just kind of maybe explaining this to somebody who doesn't know the area at all? How would you, I know it's a big loaded question, but how would you kind of give a high level overview of what the schools are like here in the Poudre School District?
Great question. Thanks for asking it. I think if you were to take the boundaries of PSD and make a dartboard out of them and throw a dart at that dartboard, wherever that dart lands, you're going to find a great school. I think that's a point of pride in our community. So if you're, considering moving here from another place and you're not familiar, I think you should rest easy that one, wherever you choose to reside, you're going to find yourself with a great elementary school, a great middle school, and a great high school. So that's one. Two, though, you have incredible choices, right? So school of choice is a concept in Colorado where even if you don't want to send your child to your local neighborhood school because of a certain program that you're interested in participating, you could choose to send your child at just about any school that you want in our district as long as there's room. So we have actually 30% of our families who want their children to participate in a specific program, whether it's international baccalaureate programs or a core knowledge program. We have expeditionary learning programs. We have small schools for students who sometimes get overwhelmed being around hundreds of students and they want more of a boutique personalized experience. We offer that. We have some students that want a hybrid. We've learned a lot about schooling during the pandemic and online learning. There's some young people and families that are very comfortable and thrive in that environment. So we're offering a school full-time K through 12 for students that want to participate in that experience. And that's not only benefiting students who love online learning, it's also for students who need more flexibility in their lives, like for people who are Olympic athletes and are training 2 or 3 days a week. We have those are people that can find a fit in Fort Collins and in the Poudre School District. So I'm really grateful to be a part of a community that has so much choice. We have, again, 30% of our families taking advantage of that. And our school district is not only, one of the highest performing school districts across the Front Range of Colorado, I share this, and I know I'm biased. I think we're one of the strongest school districts in America. Like if you've seen what has happened just in the last couple of years, like our literacy scores for young people, I think we have 3 system priorities: literacy, mental health and belonging, and making sure that our students not only graduate, but they graduate with options, right? So there's dignity and honor in a 4-year school. Some of our students want to go to community college, the military. Some students go right directly into the workforce and can find a living wage because our diploma has so much integrity. But, just in the last year alone, our literacy scores in our elementary schools went up 22%. 22%. I've been doing this work for 27 years. I've never seen
How
growth
could
like
you
that.
explain that? That's a huge jump.
Exceptional teachers who are deeply bought into doing the hard work themselves around their own learning to be a better teacher each and every day. Strong leadership and principles in each and every one of our schools. And we've invested millions of dollars in resourcing them with the highest quality curriculum and materials that you can buy. And all of those things are what's the magic, but it's the people at the center of it, right? So I think that's really important. When I moved here, as I shared, I came here during the middle of the pandemic, and it was eye-opening, like as students were coming back into the schools. One of the reasons why mental health and belonging is a second priority, and not second in terms of its prioritization, but our kids were telling us that they were not okay, that they were isolating for multiple years in their homes. They couldn't go out. They were masking up.
How are they communicating that to you? Because I oftentimes think that when kids are struggling with something at a certain age, it's harder for them to share that. So how do you create the environment where you could get that feedback from them? Because I think it's really important that you did.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's you got to do it on multiple fronts. One, you got to create a relationship where they trust you. We have trusted adults in every one of our schools. So when students are not okay, they're telling somebody, and maybe they're telling a friend. Like, we spend a lot of money on destigmatizing asking for help. There's a lot of stigmatization across the globe around accessing care or letting people know that you're not okay. So like spending a lot of resource just kind of combating that and saying, hey, like, let's be vulnerable with each other. Let's check in with each other. Let's make that a part of our way of work in school before we start getting into the reading, writing, and math. Like, let's just check in. And that way, when people start telling through their stories, we can then resource that problem and connect them with the appropriate people to make sure that they're okay. We surveyed them. So if you weren't comfortable telling somebody, if we felt maybe anonymously, you would tell us more. And so we learned a lot about that. And so in the last 2 years, we actually reduced the number of students that were reporting like sadness and hopelessness by 40%. Wow. 40% in 2 years.
Congrats.
Yeah. The number, as I said, because of that isolation, there was a lot of students actually sadly and tragically ideating even about suicide, right? So it's getting them to be vulnerable, talking about that. But we've reduced that number by 48% in 2 years. So like, those are life-saving numbers as a result of our community trusting our school district, trusting our staff, students feeling comfortable and prioritizing like whoever you are. We don't care, regardless of your identity, your background, you're going to belong in our schools. We're going to treat you with dignity. We're going to treat you with respect, and we're going to teach like our hearts out to make sure that you reach your potential. And both of those things have to happen simultaneously. So that's something that's been amazing. And our graduation rates right now over the last 2 years are the highest that they've been in 17 years. So not only are we graduating more students, but students who are participating in post-secondary success. And there's a lot of great things to be proud of in this district right now. And if there's anything that I want more people to know about, is not just these data points, but there's human beings associated with that, right? These are people's lives that get set up now to participate in our community or wherever they want to go and have access to economic mobility and have access to jobs and work and come back. Like, we don't want people to leave here. Like, that's my goal. Like, if as employers in this community are looking for talent, I want them to look in their backyard first. I know they recruited me from somewhere else, so I'm happy that they're looking elsewhere. But I think our graduates are ready to perform and do well and be active in our community as great citizens, good people, while also being able to, enhance businesses in our community in various ways to take it to another level in the future.
I love hearing a lot of this, and I think so many people have their opinions on some of these types of things that are front and center. And a lot of times, maybe this is just my opinion, but it seems like the older generations sometimes have their opinions. Well, it should be done just like it was done when I was in school. Like, this is, some of these things you're really focusing on how they're feeling, how they're doing. They may not understand how important those things are. I think if you read a book like The Anxious Generation, this book, who's the author of that? Jonathan Haidt, or however you say his name, but a great book. There are just so many different things that this younger generation is dealing with now that the older generations hadn't dealt with, on and on. So I am proud that you and the school district are making that a priority. And I also wanted to point out, in kind of in passing, you said a few things there. One, I wonder if people listening to this will hear you say, "Oh, there's special programs for people who are training for the Olympics," and they kind of think, "Who's training for the Olympics in Fort Collins, Colorado? What students?" Well, let me tell you who. Yeah. Sophia Smith. That's right. Anybody watch the Olympics recently?
Right. I did, for sure.
The Olympic.
How incredible was that?
Oh, incredible! The Olympic gold medalist, Sophia Smith, one of the most outstanding soccer players in the history of the game, a recent Poudre School District graduate.
Fossil Ridge High School. That's right.
Fossil Ridge High School, star soccer player. So, Sophia, I mean, you look at Major League Baseball rosters. I know this isn't Olympics, but it's, sports at the highest level. I think there are 5 Major League Baseball pitchers in starting rotations right now who graduated from high schools in Fort Collins. Most of those from Rocky on the west side. It kind of goes on and on. We could talk more about that, but the athletes here, the sports, it's really at a high level. I mean, we have a state champion, sprinter right now from one of our schools. He just picked up, I was reading about him just recently. He just picked up sprinting. So I guess I'll give this a try. Just rolls in and, I think he wins state in the 100 meters, the 200 meters. So we have some really exceptional athletes here. So just kind of pointing that out. So it's neat you have those programs. Also the talent, the teachers. I talk about this as much as I can with people that I meet with and I'm showing houses to. I mean, it really is exceptional. It's incredibly competitive to get a teaching position in the Poudre School District. This would have been 14, 15 years ago. I was doing some volunteer work in Guatemala and learning Spanish and doing some tutoring. And a friend I made during that trip, a guy named Matt Harris. And, fast forward, all these years later, this was a few years ago now, he applied and was hired as a teacher. And so he's in the Poudre School District. He teaches 4th grade science and math. And this is a guy who is Ivy League educated. He was a tight end at Fordham University. Oh, wow. And one of the most amazing, and one of my good friends, one of the most amazing, positive human beings you will ever meet. He's up at 4:30 in the morning, getting his I almost said business plan. It almost feels like it's a business plan, but getting his classroom plan, his lesson plans. I mean, this is how seriously he takes it, preparing every single day. And then at the end of the day, if something doesn't go well, he's so competitive with himself. He's how can I make it better? He's reaching out to parents. I mean, like the passion that I'm feeling from you in this conversation, Matt has that same passion. And I think when you come across people, in the PSD school district, it's something you feel.
Yeah,
it's something
there's a fire in people's belly here.
Yeah. I think that's just really, it's something I'm proud of. It's something that I'm excited about. We have a 5, a 7-year-old, and they're getting there. And it's just, I feel incredibly grateful to be here and have access to this. And so let's talk about some of the challenges. I mean, I know we've all read, well, when I say we've all, people who live here have read in the paper recently about there was a plan to maybe close some schools because enrollment was down. And then there was some pushback on that. There was some back and forth. How does this work? Because I know in my position, I'm just seeing more and more people moving here. Yeah. I know I'm seeing, everything's thriving. The tech sector, the healthcare, the jobs. We have this robust, diverse local economy. It's growing. There's bidding wars on houses, and it doesn't line up to me as somebody who's honestly not very educated on the issue. How we're considering closing because enrollment's down. Why is enrollment down? Yeah. insight can you give us, if it's another loaded question, but if you're just going to explain this to somebody who is kind of just reading about this issue of potential school closures for the first time, how do you explain that?
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the question on so many different fronts. I'm trying to figure out where is the best place to start. I'm a student I'm not just a leader in this community and for PSD, but I'm also a learner. And I consider myself to be a student of our community. I'm still learning and trying to understand what demographers are suggesting are playing out in terms of families and family size and birth rates and what they're predicting in the future. And I'm a fiscally conservative leader. And I really believe that we need to continue to identify efficiencies in all of our organizations, just like small and big businesses do every day, to make sure that we're continuing to provide the best type of service that we do for our families. And, as we talked about earlier, like the great athletics programs and these great school choice programs, something I didn't share then, but that I want to now, is we also offer like music and theater and the arts and incredible special education programs in all of our schools, right? So like these levels of services, this community has come to depend on as being like a standard. It's a really high standard. And as a result of our enrollment declining over the last decade in certain pockets of our community, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to afford all of those services and sustain them. So examples of that is especially at our elementary schools, where we have schools that were designed to have 600 students, in many instances now have less than 300 students. Today in Poudre School District, we have 6,000 empty seats. So most people don't know that because we have protected the loss of services to families. People haven't felt any pain associated with, because we continue to figure out creative ways to fund a solution. But our ability to do that well into the future is at risk because demographers are suggesting that our enrollment is going to decline by about 10% in the next 5 years. Now, whether they're right or not, it's a science. I'm not a demographer by trade, but I pay attention to the science of that.
But pause on that real quick. Are they just predicting people will be having fewer kids?
I mean, birth rates across the country are down. They've been down, I think, for the last 8 consecutive years in Colorado. People are not having the 2.1 children that they used to. If they are, they're having them later in life. What I can speak to as with some certainty is like I'm going on my 4th year. Every single year that I've been here in PSD, in the Fort Collins community, demographers have not been fully right. So what they have suggested is the decline. It hasn't been as bad as they're suggesting. But what has been really interesting about where they've gotten it wrong is when families move to our community, they're a little bit more well-established in their career, most likely to be able to afford a home in our community, and they have older children. So like just this year alone, we've had like 200 to 300 students come to our high schools that we did not anticipate, and they're going to be juniors and seniors. So they're brand new to the community. So glad you're here. Welcome. But we're only going to be able to serve them for 1 or 2 years and they're gone. And so what I'm trying and need to do a better job in helping educate the community. There's so much I would do different as a leader in hindsight a year ago. Like I really want to say to the community, like I'm sorry, right? Because I should have spent more time educating everyone on the problem before leading with a solution. Like every resource in this community is valuable. People are super passionate about their schools. They have moved to certain homes because of their schools. And I simply just went too fast. I had great intentions. I wanted to be a strong steward of the limited fiscal resources we have. But because of how proud and how strong our community is, they needed more time. And we all need more time to understand what the district is wrestling with so we can come up with really, more creative solutions. There's a lot of really smart, educated people in this community, and I've learned a lot from them, and they want to be a part of the solution. So I'm excited about taking a different path moving forward. But the truth of the matter is that we're still worried about our enrollment, right? So our high schools seem to be super healthy in terms of the number of students that are there. But the number of students that I shook hands with at graduation last year, which was about 22 to 2,300 students, our kindergarten class this year is about 1,000 fewer of students. So 1,300 students. And so that wave of smaller students coming up through the system is going to be problematic from a funding standpoint, because that's how our organization is funded. For every human, every child, every young adult, we get money from the state. We have local taxes that contribute to that. But if we don't get the same number of students, we have a significantly smaller budget, unless we think of a creative taxing solution or other types of solutions to make cuts in certain places that people might find more palatable. So it's really complex. There's a lot of different values that people are wrestling with. Is it a charter school thing? Is it a birth rate thing? Is it a school of choice thing? Is it a housing affordability thing? And I would say multiple things can be true at the same time. I think all of those things are the ecosystem that are working together to create our current reality. But I'm confident we'll figure this out. But I need to make sure that we're figuring it out together and not just doing it to people. And so I'm looking forward to a different way of engaging our community about this moving forward. And our Board of Education right now, they're still grappling with how best to think about this problem in partnership with the community and myself. But they're considering having a ballot measure that suggests potentially raising taxes to help save neighborhood schools and to support our teachers, to make sure we're able to retain top talent, while also looking at to invest in our infrastructure, because a lot of our schools, they're beautiful, but they're old. And 32 of our 49 traditional public schools don't have air conditioning, and it's going to be real hot next week. So as we look at what we need to replace roofs, replace playgrounds, take care of plumbing systems that are aging, make sure that we consider putting air conditioning in all of our schools, that price tag is over $1 billion. And so really, it's another reason why we were trying to find savings in every aspect of the district a year ago, because we knew that we were going to most likely need to go out and ask the community for support through taxation to help support keeping our infrastructure great so our buildings can thrive. And career technical education, like the careers that are available today, as you know, are different than they were when we were going to school. So like our classrooms have to change, our technologies have to change. And in Colorado, sadly, I think we're funded out of 50 states. We're like 48th in terms of funding. And that's not a good thing, right? It's a bad thing. So really, asking the local community for some support is, I think, what will be the strategy moving forward. And we'll see where we go, because that could really, really help. If people are super passionate about this community, passionate about our schools, but we need their help in order to continue to be a thriving community and a thriving school system.
Well, one thing I look at too, when you mentioned that the demographers are predicting this, and we're not demographers, but one thing I wonder is, do they see some of the things that you really can't see right now? And that would be, to name a few, I mean, our young professional population here is really growing. As someone who's been here for 20 years now, it's been very fascinating to see what's happened just more and more over the past 2, 3, 5 years, which is more young professionals. And why? Companies like Microsoft that, 6, 7 years ago, they weren't here, and they're here very quietly now. They don't even have any signs up. They do R&D. They're on the southeast side of town. And they started out with like a 3,000 square foot satellite office, and now they have, I think, almost 40,000 square feet. They might double that. And I think that's a great example of one of these companies in the tech sector. Also, there's Broadcom bringing in, hiring, it's young professionals. Woodward Governor, that's another one. But there are companies that are hiring more young professionals now, young professionals who, if they don't have kids, they will. I just see that really happening here, I think, more than people realize. So this has always been an amazing place for kids. I think everyone knows that. But has it been a great place for young professionals, high-paying jobs for people in their 20s, 30s? I don't think it has, but that not only is changing, it's changed, and it's going to change a lot more. So that'll be fascinating. Does that attract more people? And does those numbers maybe exceed expectations? So maybe it's that happening in tandem with some tax things, but it's a solution, or it's a problem, I should say, that has a solution in your mind that that we can very much attack in a way that is going to have a favorable outcome.
Yeah. Well, if you're one of those young professionals listening in, have as many babies as you can. Because maybe we have a baby making of a campaign in the community, because I think that's really, I heard a quote recently that really resonated with me, that, our youth is 20% of our population, but they're 100% of our future. And so I think, people are contemplating differently on when to have kids, when to start a family based upon their career choices and getting their finances in order. And I have a lot of respect for all of those particular decisions, but I'm really hopeful that we see a swing in the youth population in our community, because there's such a vibrant sense of not just what our schools can offer, but our parks and the activities. It's just, there's an amazing plethora of different things that benefit an entire family, not just a young administrator or a young executive. But it's I'm happy to hear those trends and data. That's really good to hear.
Yeah, I wish I had more hard data, and maybe I can put some together. But I do have these anecdotal things, whether it's Microsoft or Broadcom, or I could really go down the list and give a lot more examples. But what I am seeing specifically in the tech sector, what I am seeing in the healthcare sector, really it's just the growth of CSU also. People should understand that Colorado State University is the largest employer in Northern Colorado, and they hire a lot of young professionals. So the employers for people in this age range who, may have young kids or have young kids in the near future, that segment is growing. And we hear a lot about folks moving from other states, cash buyers. Sure. They are contributing to our bidding wars. It's true. That does make the prices higher. They come in from California, Chicago, Texas. But people should ask more why they're coming here. And an increasing reason that they are choosing Fort Collins is they want to be close to their kids. And why are their kids here? That's another question. A follow-up question people should ask is, well, because their kids can now find high-paying jobs here at some of these employers that I just mentioned. I just recently helped he was the head hospital administrator at Mayo Clinic, Rochester, Minnesota. He and his wife could have retired anywhere. Why Fort Collins? Well, their kids are here. They're professionals in the community who have one young child now, and that's what attracted them. That is going to happen more and more here. I'm excited to see that happen, and also excited to see how that continues to kind of affect and benefit the school district, and maybe help with some of these things, these things that are happening. But overall, the school ratings are phenomenal. If someone is listening to this and they want to learn more about the schools, because I do get this question too, how do I find out what this is rated and that? And some people are very analytical. Sure. They love the anecdotal stories. They're going to enjoy listening to this podcast and learning more about you. But if they want to get online and just learn more about the schools ratings, more about the programs, what's a resource that we can direct them to?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I would say go to our district's website, psdschools.org. That's probably the best place that you can capture all the essence of not just the district at large, but all of the nuance of each of our individual schools. And if you get a chance to come visit our community, go to a supermarket and ask somebody. Go to a coffee shop, go to a brewery and sit down, have a beer or coffee, and sit down and just ask somebody about their experiences. Let their human stories drive what we are sharing as a system, because I think, one, you'll see a lot of validation. You'll see a sense of spirit and pride. But people, I think, generally have a lot of enthusiasm and respect for our school district. And I'm really proud and grateful for that. So I think those resources would be the best.
What's your vision for where it's going? I can tell, talking to you, that you're competitive, you're driven, you're passionate. I'm excited just for the future after talking with you today. But if you were going to give a vision, if you were going to name 1, 2, 3 things that you really want to accomplish in the next 1, 3, 5 years, what would some of those things be?
Yeah, thank you. I want to reimagine school, right? You got to do it slowly. I think we really want to make sure the foundational aspects of what students need to learn to be able to kind of pursue their personal interests and passions should be rock solid. And I feel like we have that down at our elementary and middle schools. But I think we have room to play at our high schools around thinking about what are some of our local career pathways where some of our businesses may not be able to attract the talent and they're having to recruit elsewhere. Like, how do we design our course progressions to be directly feeding our local community, whether it's electric vehicles in the automotive sector, or if it's computer science, or if it's behavioral science, we got healthcare. All of those things, we need to be figuring out how to draw upon some of the post-secondary experiences in our community colleges and our 4-year programs and bringing them into the brick and mortar experience of our high schools. And our community's buying into that. Like, locally, we've had a $2 million investment recently given to the school district from the Bohemian Foundation in Larimer County to actually expand our technology programs and our career technology programs that are centered on automotive care, that are centered on informational technology, to make sure that we can offer them to more students and have the most robust technologies. Woodward has put over $500,000 of their own equipment into our school system. So not only can we use their equipment that they have on their site, but they can actually leverage our own facilities to reskill and upskill their own employees. So trying to blur the lines between business and our schools is a passion for me, to make sure that our kids, when they graduate, like I said, it's not about the diploma, right? Like, the diploma is one thing. I want a student to be able to look me in the eye and say, these are the 3 or 4 things that I can choose to do because I went to Poudre School District. Like, that's what gives me goosebumps, right? That's what energizes me. It makes me want to get out of bed every day. And we have incredible people leading that effort in this school system. And we've expanded where we have, we're offering more concurrent enrollment, more college courses to high school students than just about any other district in the state right now. So amazing. And it's free. That's free for families. So think about, you actually can leave high school with a diploma. You may actually be able to leave with an associate's degree. I met a graduate last year at Fossil Ridge High School. She actually had her associate's degree before I ever gave her a diploma.
How do you do that? Let's walk through that for a second, because I think that's really fascinating. I'm learning for the first time that you can leave high school, and this is in 4 years.
Well, one, you got to be really driven.
Okay.
Right. So that's really, really important. That's not the path that I think is appropriate for all students, but for people that are hungry and maybe want to have the financial incentive of graduating high school with a ton of college credits, each of our respective high schools allows that to happen. So that's not one school, it's all of our high schools. So I think that's really important. And 2, the way that we have flexibility in our credits, if you continue to stay on course, you can double dip and be taking college credits and high school credits at the same time. Some students actually take credits in the summer. They're doing them online. So it really depends. But I think what's most important is that we don't box a student into this is the only path that you can be in, right? You want to be able to provide flexibility. If people figure out, I want people to try things, right? Without having to feel like it's so risky that you're going to be wasting your time. So if you go down a path and you say, hey, that's not my passion, I want to try this, let's offer that. So it's not necessarily the associate's degree. That is the goal to me. That's a real benefit and value add from a cost saving standpoint. But I want people to have a sense of who they are, right, as a person, to know that they're still learning, but also have connection where when they graduate, it's boom, boom, boom. And Woodward Governor is an example. I have students from PSD right now that are getting up at 4:30 in the morning and driving to Woodward to work until 10, 11 o'clock, and then driving to high school. So it's connecting people to the community directly with the workforce. We're paying students now for apprenticeships. We actually created a position with the local Chamber of Commerce, and we have work-based learning coordinators that are in each of our high schools that they actually play matchmaker with each other. So student X says, hey, I want to work in said business. There's a dedicated human being in our high schools that's working with the Chamber of Commerce to find a local business to give that young adult a job opportunity, an internship, externship. And businesses are just starting to learn about that. So they're looking for workforce, right? And the district is paying for those apprenticeships, not the business. So it's super, super cool. And that's just the beginning.
Wow. If people get one thing from listening to this, I hope they understand what you're doing I love what you said about blurring the line between this job market and school.
Yeah.
And when I was growing up, I graduated high school in 1999. I just recall, and not that everybody felt this way, but it seemed like high school was a means to the end.
That's right.
And the only end that was successful in anybody's mind was college. And I find it interesting in hindsight. I don't think that really prepared people, that didn't do what this Poudre School District, what our schools are doing. I mean, it's preparing them for the next thing. It's really getting them to know themselves too,
That's right.
like
That's
you
right.
said, and having them, ask themselves the question, like, what's best for me? What am I into? Where are my skills? Where are my talents? And then working to connect them to these things. So it's incredibly exciting. And on that note, the trades are becoming a different thing. It's a different conversation now. I mean, maybe college isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think the trades, they offer career options that, honestly weren't offered when I was coming out of high school. So what more can you say about that? Or, I mean, are we seeing that happen more? Are we seeing people come out of high school? We mentioned, some are coming out with an associate's degree now. Are we seeing more people come out of high school and get immediately connected into the trades in different areas more than before?
Yeah, we're expanding the trades exponentially. HVAC systems, construction, advanced manufacturing. I mean, when I first moved here a couple of years ago, the construction firms and developers in town were saying for every 5 employees that are leaving their field, there's only 1 coming in. Wow. Right. So that was a huge opportunity. And so we have some real creative principals who are out of the box thinkers. So like Poudre High School right now is the home of our district's Career Technical Center. It used to be formerly known as the Futures Lab. You can actually take a geometry course and a construction course at the same time. So as you're learning about the concepts of geometry, you're immediately able to go apply that to building a home behind the school that we then donate to Habitat for Humanity.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So again, that's blurring the lines, right? And then they get credit in both of those areas too. So which allows more efficiencies to take more courses. And we're hiring more teachers who are directly from industry, who we're helping them learn how to be a better teacher, but they're bringing their expertise from the trades. And we're also really, I think, doubling down on this concept of regionalism. And what I mean by that is we actually are partnering with our neighboring school district, Thompson School District, which is housed in Loveland. And we're realizing, like, do we want to offer competing paths, or should we offer different paths and allow students, whether you're in Loveland or Fort Collins, to access both? And we're doing that now. Like, we're saying, like, let's stop. Like, we're competitive on the football field and with our marching bands, but let's be efficient with our resources and realize as we bring people who are industry experts, let's not care who's in front of them, whether they're your student or mine. They're children, they're young adults. So let's figure that out. And so we're working together. So that $2 million that I told you earlier that came from Bohemian and Larimer County, Thompson got $2 million too. That was a $4 million investment.
Wow.
So it's the concept of regionalism, our chambers of commerce working locally, not just in Fort Collins, but working with Weld County together and really making sure that we're building out all of Northern Colorado with our students, with our schools. Like, I'm super jazzed about being a part of something like that.
Well, I am too, because it's, taking this from competition to collaboration.
Yeah.
I mean, it carries on the theme that I'm hearing through this entire conversation, which is putting the student first.
That's right.
Like we all hear about in business, putting the customer first.
That's right.
But we don't really hear about putting the student first that much. And you are putting the student first, and they're learning by doing, which is huge. I mean, how many people out there right now, if you're thinking, don't you learn better by actually doing the thing? I know I do too. And that's how you make mistakes. And you kind of learn that, contrary to maybe again what we were taught when we were growing up, is that, you're not supposed to make mistakes. You're not supposed to fail. Well, I think you kind of learn when you're doing that. That's a part of the process. So we were talking a little bit before we even started rolling today that, me doing this podcast, I mean, that's kind of, being nervous at first and struggling with just some of the tech and things, and then you kind of come out the other side. But it's kind of the price of admission to get to wherever you want to go, having some challenges, having some failure, getting back up again with it, and doing is the only way to do that. You have to jump in and do it. So that seems like that is really understood.
You got to be vulnerable.
Yeah,
right. We have to normalize vulnerability, not perfectionism. Yeah. So I think, as we were talking about earlier, like older generations, and I'm grateful to grow up in the generation that I did, But I was also taught, and I didn't say this without any like slight towards my family and friends and my community that I am proud to be a part of and still love dearly. But I was taught not to talk about my problems, right? I was taught to not talk about my vulnerabilities. Like, you keep that in house. And I've spent like the second half of my adult life unlearning those things, because when you think about embracing failure, taking risks, it's not just in our core classrooms. If you want people to be whole and healthy mentally and physically and, you know, all aspects of our life, you got to be able to embrace letting people know when you're not okay. Right. And if you can have those parallel things, they're not even parallel. There should be intersecting, interweaving, allowing our humanity and imperfections to be a part of the process. Like, we have a long way to go to grow as a society in that space, but that's what's happening in this community. It's slow, it's organic, but the more that our students are, they're willing to be more vulnerable than the adults. So I just to be quite honest about it, they're willing to talk about the challenges of the world in a non-polarized way more than sometimes our adults. And we need to learn from them too. Like, listen to them and like, what did they want? A piece of our school district that many people probably don't know, and I don't know of another school district in America that does this, is we actually measure student connection. Do they get connected to other students in the school?
How do you measure that?
We actually ask them. Every year they take a survey. So it's not just student to student. Are you connected to the adults in your school? Are you connected to the custodian? Are you connected to the coaches? Are you connected to your teachers? And are you connected to your passions and interests? And so that data that's real specific to individual students, we can tell who's disengaged. Who are we not reaching their mind and their heart? And it allows us to swarm those people with support services, checking in with them. What can we do? What are we doing that's not working? And so it allows a more intimate, professional conversation with not just the student, but their family, that allows partnership and vulnerability. But surfacing that data allows us to respond in a very human-centered way. And I think that's what leads to us being creative and connecting them to job opportunities, work apprenticeships. So it's a both and. I'm a big believer in that. And I know people across the country, maybe even in our community, will challenge me on that. Like, sometimes, you know, I've been told, you know, stay in my lane. My job is only to teach reading, writing, math. But if you want me to get results in those areas, making sure people feel that they're dignified and that they're seen as human and that we're reaching them here, right, is really, really an important part of that. Because I've never met somebody that is thriving academically but struggling on the inside.
Yeah, I think realizing so many of these kids, I would put myself in this category. I think we moved, you know, cue the small violin, but we moved like 7 or 8 times before high school for me. And so it was a lot of sitting at the lunch table by myself from place to place. I heard a while back somebody talk about how, you know, a lot of kids are like orchids. They need really the right environment. And it's just hard to achieve that when you're moving around a little bit. And so I believe in that 100% and am excited that you do too.
Yeah. Thank you.
You know, I think that's really great. I feel like after this conversation, especially, we're creating this environment for the leaders of tomorrow. I mean, we are preparing the people who are going to go out and just do exceptional things in the areas wherever they're meant to thrive.
I feel that's true.
Like,
I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, let's go. I'm pumped up right now.
Good.
Like,
Me too. We're talking about my life's purpose, so it's easy to get. I had goosebumps just talking to you for, like, you know, over several of these topics. But it's to know that we're getting the results, right? Results matter to people. People want to know at the end of the day. Yeah, I'm saying a lot of things, but can you point to the data that shows that it's working in every single area in this system? We are thriving. We're learning. We're not perfect yet, right? There are students that we haven't yet met their needs, but that's what drives me every day to get out of bed and figure out what can we do next? What's the next thing, while also embracing what we already have.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, to wrap this up, there's some questions I like to ask all the guests. Yeah. You know, and we're gonna go back, you know, 4 years. You made your first trip to Fort Collins. You had a great time. We touched on that, but let's kind of rapid fire questions. Favorite brewery? Where are you taking friends to go have a beer?
It's so hard to say this because I'm going to alienate the other breweries.
You can give up to 3.
Up to 3. Love Odell's, love New Belgium, Stodgy's because it's close to my office.
Oh, Stodgy's is great.
Yeah,
good one. What about breakfast brunch?
Breakfast brunch. Oh my goodness.
Those of you don't know, you come to Fort Collins, especially on the weekend. If you're just rolling out of bed, kind of sleeping in, and you don't get over there to Old Town until 9:30 or so, and you're like, oh, I'm going to go to Silver Grill. I'm going to go to Lucille's. I'm going to go to Snooze. Well, get ready to wait in line for a while. So you get out there early, but we have great breakfast, great lunch spots in Old Town. Our downtown is thriving, as we've talked about a lot on this show. But yeah, what are your spots? Where do you go?
I'll tell you, I like to stay close to home and do DC Oaks. Man, I think they got one of the best omelets and the best tater tots in town.
It's a great choice. We had Gerard Boyle, who is one of the founders.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And a proud parent of PSD graduates.
Yes, yes, he is. He was on a few episodes ago.
Oh, cool.
So check that one out. But yeah, DC Oaks that's a great choice. What about lunch? What about dinner?
Lunch and dinner. I'm a big fan of Jack's. I think living in Florida for 17 years, having oysters every weekend was just something that I became kind of normalized to, especially growing up in Pennsylvania where I'd never had an oyster in my life. And so having a local spot like Jack's that has fresh oysters and seafood every single day is great. Big fan of Austin's for lunch. I just love to not just enjoy their food, but on the corner of College and Mountain, it's a great place to just see and feel the energy of the community, the vibrancy of people, just like people watching and the different people meeting. You could see, deals are being made. Parents are visiting their kids from CS. There's just such a great joy and energy there. Those are probably two that I would elevate.
Buffalo meatloaf, rotisserie chicken.
Yeah.
If those things sound good to you, check out Austin.
Their cornbread too.
Their cornbread. How could I forget? It's their cornbread kind of comes with everything.
I know.
Too. You can get all the different salads. They put cornbread on the side. That's making me hungry just talking about it. What about starting the day? Let's go to coffee shops. Where do you go if you're going to have a coffee meeting? Just get the day going.
Harbinger, I like a lot. Yeah, there's it's right here on the port. Is it called the Fox in the Den?
Yeah, Fox in the Den, kind of down from Stodgy.
Yeah. So I like that one a lot. Cups Coffee on Taft Hill, big supporter of Cups Coffee. I have a lot of my meetings there. They're a huge supporter of the school district, of our local youth, and they hire a lot of our students both in the summer and during the school year and give apprenticeships and workplace opportunities. So really grateful to the family that runs Cups Coffee too.
Those are great choices. Harbinger on the southeast side. Jonathan Jarrow, who started Harbinger, he's a friend. It was going back like 12 years ago. He was operating a coffee cart out of a basement space in Old Town. I mean, if you weren't looking for this, you wouldn't find it. I heard about it from somebody else. So I went to check it out. And it's just quiet. You go into this basement, and it was the best coffee I'd ever had in my entire life.
Yeah.
I made an introduction to somebody who was developing a building on the corner of Mulberry and Mason. And, long story short, he got into the main floor space there. And then now he's got that location.
Awesome.
Then, that location in Old Town has moved to a better location in Old Town. So you can find Harbinger Coffee on College Avenue in Old Town, or the one you go to, I'm sure, is in Southeast Fort Collins in the same center that DC Oaks.
Starry Night is another one that I just recently went to for the first time, and I really enjoyed that too. That was a good one.
Oh, the best spicy chai.
Okay.
In Fort Collins.
It was some fancy tea that I had. It wasn't chai, but I was the presentation of it alone was a little intimidating, but I really enjoyed it.
Well, these are great. And I feel like we could talk forever. We could talk more about the parks. I know you're close to Twin Silo Park for everyone listening. Check that out. Whether you have kids or you don't have kids, I mean, Twin Silo is it's beautiful, big open space. They have 4 awesome pickleball courts there. They've got the dog park there. They have the different side. If you got a small dog, if you got a big dog, and that's kind of necessary, I think. But one of my favorite city parks is Twin Silo. But man, this has been really fun.
I've had a lot of fun too.
I knew this was going to be fun. This was even more fun than I thought it might be.
Awesome.
So
thanks,
Brian. Thank you for your time, and congratulations on your success so far. Cheers to a great future. And again, just thank you so much for taking the time today.
You bet. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Cheers.
Cheers.